Hi, my name is Haley Bartling, and for my project 2, I decided to show you guys how to make a chocolate cake. The name of this recipe is called a three-hole cake, and you guys will see why later in the video. But a little bit of history about this cake is originally my great-grandma came up with this recipe, so it's a family recipe. It's been in the family forever. Everybody knows about the cake. It's even been published in like a few local cookbooks in like my grandma's hometown and stuff. And everybody in my family makes this cake look easy. A little bit of background is it seems like everybody but me, cooking and baking just comes naturally. Everything that comes out of the kitchen comes out just perfect. But for me, when I first made this cake, it took me 3 tries in one night to make a perfect cake. The first time, I didn't set the oven to the right temperature. I set it to 275 instead of 375, and it bakes way slower than it was supposed to, and it just didn't come out right. The second time, I left the baking soda out, and it came out and it was super dense, and it just wasn't fluffy. It wasn't right. But then the third time, finally, I perfected it, and now that I did, I don't think I'll ever mess this cake up again. So if we get to the ingredients, for the cake, the dry ingredients are 1.5 cups of flour, 1 cup sugar, 2 tablespoons of cocoa powder, 1.5 cup teaspoons of baking soda, 1 teaspoon of salt, and 1 teaspoon of espresso powder. The espresso powder is optional. You don't have to use it if you don't have it. It just adds a little bit of a coffee espresso flavor to the cake. And now the wet ingredients are 6 tablespoons oil, 1 teaspoon vanilla extract, 1 cup of water, and 1 teaspoon of vinegar. Here's just a quick picture of the cake ingredients. In the picture with the dry ingredients, they're all measured out, but they're not measured out in the wet ingredients. And then for the frosting, the ingredients are 1 1/3 cup of sugar, 1/4 cup of cocoa powder, 1/2 cup of butter, 1/3 cup of milk, and a teaspoon of vanilla, and then just a dash of salt. And usually, even if I make the cake for ingredients to 1 cake, I'd usually double the frosting just because I love the frosting and I love cakes that have a ton of frosting on them, and that's just my opinion. So I usually always double the frosting, but you don't have to. Okay, so the baking instructions. For this cake, you want to preheat the oven to 375. Don't forget that. Prepare a 9x13 cake pan just by spraying it with, I usually spray it with cooking spray, or you can butter and then lightly flour the pans. And then you want to take all the dry ingredients and sift it into your baking pan. And then you want to create 3 holes across the pan, and then in the first hole you add the vanilla, and then in the next hole you add the vinegar, and then in the final hole you add the oil, and then you take the cup of water and pour it all over the ingredients, and then you whisk it with a fork to get all the chunks out, and then you bake it for 15 to 25 minutes. Usually it takes about 22 minutes. This time, when I just made it, it took like 21 minutes. And to test when it's done, you just put a toothpick in the middle, and when it comes out clean, that means the cake is all done. And then for the frosting, once the cake is out of the oven, this is the time to start to make your frosting. You don't really want to make your frosting when the cake is in the oven, because the cake has to be cool to be able to frost it. So take it out of the oven once it's done, and then so it has time to cool, and then begin your frosting. So you want to combine in like a large saucepan, medium saucepan, the sugar, cocoa powder, milk, and salt. And then I always stir this the whole time I'm making it. You bring those ingredients to a boil, and then you let it boil and keep stirring, otherwise the frosting will burn at the bottom of the pan. So you want to keep it like a quick stir the whole time. And so you let it boil for 2 minutes, and then you take it off the heat, and you keep stirring until it cools, and then it thickens. And then you just take this frosting and you pour it all over the cake evenly, and it will solidify and just be like the perfect creamy, sugary chocolate frosting. And then this is the final product of the cake. In this recipe, usually I don't do it like this, but I wanted to make it look pretty for the presentation, so I actually took 2 round cake pans instead of one big rectangle one. I took 2 round ones, and I made two cakes, and then once I let it cool, I dumped the cakes out, and then I stacked the cakes, and then I doubled the recipe, and I just decorated it with some flowers out of my mom's garden. But you don't even have to decorate it. This cake literally lasts always like 2 days maximum in my house. People eat it all the time, and it's so good. So I really suggest that you try it, and it's easy, and it's chocolate cake from scratch, so you can't really beat that. I hope you guys enjoy.